You've got to hunt and kill what you eat. And if you don't kill, you don't eat. That makes you an entrepreneur. Quite frankly, everybody in life is an entrepreneur. You are self-directed for your life when you came out of the gate. You're on your own in terms of creating and designing the life that you're ultimately going to lead. That is the basic definition of an entrepreneur.
Top leaders, meaningful conversation, actionable advice, bulldoze complacency, ignite inspiration, create impact. Produced by Southwestern family of companies. This is the Action Catalyst.
Are you interested in advertising with the Action Catalyst? Our listeners could be hearing about your brand right here, right now. For details, shoot us an email at info@theactioncatalyst.com.
Darren Hardy is who we are talking with today. He is the New York Times bestselling author of The Compound Effect and the Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. And he is basically going to prepare you for the wild ride of entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship. And this is not a normal part of Darren's bio, but I wanted to share this because, Darren was making a six-figure income when he was 18 years old. He was making over $1 million a year when he was 24 years old. And by the time he was 27, he was the head of a $50 million business. Darren, statistically, 66% of all small businesses fail. And you kind of set on this mission to figure out why. And I know you've interviewed Tony Robbins and Donald Trump and John Maxwell and Damon John and Maria Shriver. I mean, it's like what you do. What have you discovered about what's causing these small businesses to fail?
Yeah, here's what disturbs me. 90% of working adults are employees. And of those who finally do muster the courage to step out of that herd and start their own business, 66% of them fail. I mean, 66%. To me, that is unacceptable. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way. And really, this statistic is before the onslaught of new entrepreneurs that are coming on board. I mean, over the next several years, millions of people will become entrepreneurs by desperation because they were laid off and can't find a job as corporations continue to find ways to do more with less, or by inspiration, since now being an entrepreneur is cool, which is relatively a new phenomenon, by the way. It wasn't the case when I first started out. I mean, being an entrepreneur meant you weren't smart enough to get into the right schools or talented enough to get a good job. But the awe-inspiring stories coming out of Silicon Valley and elsewhere have rebranded and popularized entrepreneurship, now making it vogue. And that's good news. The bad news is that most of these millions of new entrepreneurs are not ready. They are not prepared. They will try and they will fail. And we're talking about good people, smart people with families who depend on them, with good ideas, market viable ideas, who still, with the best of these intentions, will fail. And so I won't have it. This is why I set out on this personal mission. And so the question I needed to answer is, okay, why? Why do they fail? Discovering the cause of this gross statistic became a personal passion and a personal crusade of mine. And, I see these just aren't millions of businesses that are failing. To me, these are millions of families getting hurt and having their dreams squashed. And so after years of studying and analyzing and combing through all the existing resources, what I found was startling. All the previously reported reasons and assumptions for the cause of failure were incorrect. I mean, things like lack of capital or bad location or lack of credit or inventory mismanagement and pressure from competition, those were not really the main causes of failure. In actuality, the reasons for most failure was not due to outside factors. Instead, they were mainly internal factors. Most often, failure wasn't caused by economic reasons at all. There were more emotional reasons. Simply put, the entrepreneurs were not ready. They were not prepared emotionally and equipped with the unique skills that are unique to entrepreneurship that they needed to operate successfully as entrepreneurs. They could have succeeded if they only knew what to expect in advance. Okay. And so, that's really the great problem that is causing people to step finally into entrepreneurship and then fail. They're just not ready. They're not equipped.
What do you think is the biggest mistake that most entrepreneurs make when they kind of first get started, when they first get out of the gate?
Well, I do think that people who are in sales, if you are independently responsible for generating your income, which means that you've got to hunt and kill what you eat, and if you don't kill, you don't eat, that makes you an entrepreneur in my book. And so anybody that is in commission sales is in fact an entrepreneur. Quite frankly, everybody in life is an entrepreneur. You are self-directed for your life. When you came out of the gate, you could say, if we are going to call the beautiful thing that is the womb of our mother a gate. But as soon as you came out of that gate, you're on your own in terms of creating and designing the life that you're ultimately going to lead. That is the basic definition of an entrepreneur. So now sales, and when people first step into entrepreneurship, the mistake that they make is they're excited, right? A new opportunity, a new frontier where they're going to change their life, change their future. And the mistake is they expect everyone around them to be excited for them. And the reality is that when you leave the 90%, you got to remember, 90% of the people take a paycheck and are just working for their pension. When you leave that herd of the 90%, the herd turns on you. Simply put, when you stop being like other people stop liking you. And so what happens is that people can look at those that appear on the cover of Success Magazine or on Bluebird's Icon show and go, oh, well, those people, they went to Harvard, they came from the right families, they were lucky or whatever. It's easy to excuse themselves when it's somebody, who's on the cover of a famous magazine. But when somebody in their own peer group, maybe even somebody within their own family, breaks out from the herd and goes on and becomes an entrepreneur and becomes successful, that eliminates all their excuses. And what happens is that even if these people love you and they care for you and they want the best for you, their ego doesn't. And their ego unconsciously becomes vengeful. And so tactics like innuendo or doubt, ridicule, mockery, sarcasm, scorn, sneering, belittlement, humiliation, jeering, taunting, teasing, and dozens of other ways, it's much easier for them to try to break your spirit and kill your dream than it is to break out from the herd and join and follow you. And so that's number one. The other thing is just they're just not as courageous as you. They don't have the same courage to leave the corporate bosom. It goes back to a quote that I love from Gandhi. He said, people will first ignore you and then they will laugh at you. And then if you persist further, if you continue to walk away from the herd, now they will fight you and ultimately you will win. And if you look at the great people of history who have pushed human progress, like Gandhi, like Martin Luther King, like Jesus of Nazareth, like Steve Jobs. I mean, all those that you can point to, they went through that same evolution where first people ignored them. Oh, yeah, you said you were going to change your life the last time. I remember the last company you joined or the last business that you started, or the last diet. Yeah. And then when you keep persisting further, you keep going to the gym, you keep making progress on your business, you keep championing this revolutionary idea. Now they start laughing at you and mocking you and sneering and so forth. And then if you actually start becoming successful and you're showing up to the family reunion successful, now they fight you, or the marketplace fights you, or society or culture now fights you. But then ultimately you win. And so just those that step out of the herd, they just have to be prepared for that journey. And that's the emotional journey that people are going to have to go through to get on the other side of success as an entrepreneur, and quite frankly, success in life. Everybody thinks that successful people are popular. It's exactly the opposite. The more successful you are, the fewer people will like you. They might envy you, they might even praise you in some cases, but they don't like you because you make them feel bad about themselves. Now, you don't do it, but your example of what's possible, your proof that it can be done, makes them feel bad about themselves. And so it is just one of those things that you have to accept as part of the process. I actually see it as evidence of progress, because the higher you climb up on the ladder of success, the fewer and fewer people will like you. I remember when I had this epiphany, I was watching the election come down and Barack Obama won by a slight margin, right? It was just barely 51%. And I remember at that moment, I realized why I wasn't more successful. And the reality was I came to was too many people like me. I mean, if I walk into a room, maybe 2-3%, I don't know, but let's go 10. Maybe 10% of the people don't like me. If Barack Obama walks into any room in America, now we're talking about his own countrymen. Any room in America, more than half the people don't like him. And maybe today it could be more. But even at the night of that election, when he's waving to the crowd with his family and the Chicago sky and this great celebration that our new president deemed victorious and so forth, still half the people were mad and upset that he won. And that's arguably the most powerful human being on the planet. And so the higher you climb, the fewer and fewer people will like you. And so just understand that it is part of the process. I mean, how many people didn't like Steve Jobs? I mean, how many people didn't like, look at it this way, how many people didn't like Jesus of Nazareth?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, to the point where they ended up crucifying. So just know that that's part of the journey, not crucifixion, of course. And just see it as evidence of progress. I had a friend of mine, and he recently said, I got this terrible article written about our company in the New York Times. I'm like, dude, you have arrived. You have arrived, because you know in your heart what you're doing is good. It's noble, and it's for all the right reasons. So it's not like you're doing anything immoral. So as long as you know that your mission and your cause is right, no matter what is ever said about you, and if you're getting the New York Times to write about you, you are shaking things up. You are pushing human progress. Dogs don't bark at parked cars, right? So if you're moving is when you stir up the dogs and they start chasing you down the road, mad as heck, right? So that's just part of the journey, and part of what you will face is the price of success, essentially.
Now, there is another part of that. There's going to be a lot of people that don't like you, but also there's going to be a few that are inspired by you, that you transform, that those are the people who go on the journey with you. And that's got to be one of the greatest blessings, right?
It is. And everybody understands and is delighted by that, right? The thing that they don't understand is what we just described. They go through a lot of emotional difficulties, that the people around them turn on them, and that they are not necessarily as popular as people might assume. But yes, the inspiration you are, the great example, those that you inspire, the letters that you get, the testimonials of your contribution to them, the marketplace or whatever, all those are the wonderful, make it all worth it payoffs. But just understand, to get to that, there's these other things that if you didn't know were coming could knock you out entirely.
One of the things you talk about is you say that people think they know how to sell, but then they end up doing it wrong. What are they doing wrong? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think people learn how to sell through watching Glengarry Glen Ross or Wall Street or Boiler Room or The Death of a Salesman. They think that selling is this pushing and prodding and closing and, the Jack Benny close and the double, triple tie down, all these things that were taught in the 80s and the way that movies portray salespeople. That's not accurate. It's the opposite of accurate, in fact. And I always say, it's not pushing and prodding. It's questioning and listening. I mean, really the best example of a great salesperson. I'll give you an example of what not to do. So I had a girl from way back when, and she calls me in a panic. Oh my God, I went to the bathroom this morning and there's blood on the toilet. And now she wasn't pregnant or anything like that. And I said, well, why are you calling me? I faint at the sight of blood. I mean, call a nurse practitioner. And so she calls a nurse practitioner, and the nurse practitioner, who must have been new to the job, was like, oh my God, that sounds terrible. You got to come down to ER right away. And she rushes down to ER, and she's sitting there in a panic. I mean, and she's crying on the phone as she's in the waiting room and so forth. And the doctor walks in and she's just in hysterics. And he asked her 3 or 4 questions, wrote a couple things down, asked her 3 or 4 more questions. Then finally he asked her, well, what did you have for dinner last night? And she said, well, I was in a hurry, so I just boiled a pot of beets. And he said, honey, you're going to be fine. You just urinated beet juice. Uh-huh. And there's the difference between, assuming that what everybody wants, people go out there, they think, I've got this great product. I assume everybody wants it. And they just start pushing themselves. They're pushing their prognosis or their prescription on everybody, when in reality, you might have it all wrong. You might actually be prescribing something to somebody that is completely inaccurate. And so the best example of how to really be as a salesperson is to be like a doctor. A doctor doesn't make any assumptions whatsoever. They are going to ask questions, narrow down to the point where they go, okay, I think I've got exactly what it is that you want, the relief to that pain, and they give them a prescription. But it was only through a series of really great questions. Another example is a lawyer, right? By process, they can't make statements when they are interviewing a witness. They can only go into that process with a yellow pad of questions, and they ask a whole variety of different questions to get the witness to self-reveal. And you can't make the statement for them. You can only have them make it through your questions. And quite frankly, then once they self-reveal, you say, I rest my case, which essentially means here's the solution to that. But it was only through the self-identification of the consultative questions that brought them to that point. And so it's the opposite. Instead of pushing and prodding and selling and pitching and presenting, that's the way most people are taught sales. The opposite is that instead of working on your presentation or your pitch, I say work on your questions. Those questions that help dig out of somebody their real pains, their real problems, their real hopes, their real desires, their real ambitions. And then all you've got to do is repeat back to them what they said that attached to whatever it is that you have, if it truly is the solution to the pain or the desire that they have self-identified.
I love it. And we all think of doctors and lawyers. We go, oh, these are professional people of high esteem. And when you think of salespeople, the profession has kind of one of low, it's kind of low level, or that's at least the way it's portrayed in movies. Okay. You talk about, Darren, the most difficult challenge that we face. Would you mind sharing with everybody what that is?
Yeah, we live in an era of epic distraction. We are overwhelmed by the information and solicitations on our attention that deluge us day in and day out. All these tools that we built for productivity, right? The smartphone, the tablet, the computer, the laptop, the rest of them, all these things that we've built to try to make ourselves more productive have advanced far faster than our human capacity to manage ourselves with them. I mean, quite frankly, while we've been doing this interview, your phone has probably had an OS update. But in the last 200,000 years, our brain and nervous system has not had a update in that entire period of time. And so technology has outstripped our capacity to manage ourselves. It's not technology's fault. Like a lot of people say, oh, the reason why people are fat and overweight is we have all this low nutrient, long haul food so convenient at our fingertips all the time. No. It's not an overabundance of food that is causing the problem. If food doesn't just fly off the shelf and into your pie hole, you've got to reach out, grab it, and stick it into your face, right? So same thing with information overload. It's not all the information that is the overabundance of information. It's the overconsumption of information that is causing the overwhelm. So we're still responsible. We're still sticking the food in our face, and we're exposing ourselves to the information overload that we claim victim to. And so the challenge is, how do you stay focused? Now, we've always needed to be focused. We needed to be focused in the 18th century, the 19th century, the 20th century. We've always needed to be focused. But in an era of epic distraction, we need to be insanely focused. We have to have rules, rituals, guidelines in order to self-manage ourselves, to protect ourselves from ourselves, quite frankly, with all these incredible shiny tools of distraction that we have readily at hand or at fingertip or at lap, constantly trying to solicit our attention, take us off our track of our goals or the progress we're trying to make, take us off our agenda. Instead of creating, we spend most of our days reacting. And so that's the great challenge, is how do you create insane focus and become insanely productive in an era that is just overwhelmed, overwashed with distraction?
Where do you want people to go to kind of stay in touch with you? Where do you want to have people pointed to?
Go to rollercoasterbook.com. That's just rollercoasterbook.com. And I promise you, it will be worth the amount of money in book and audio form. I highly recommend the audio form. Just as those that are listening to this, you get a whole different sense of the heart, soul, and feeling of somebody in audio than just reading the printed page. So that's where to go. Rollercoasterbook.com.
Darren, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And thanks for listening.